most of you are not really aware of the railway other than being a nuisance and holding you up at intersections. However, at one time it was the lifeline of this community, and that was before the railways. Of course, they had the pack trains and a pack sack, and that was it. So this was a giant step forward. But people who grew up here with simply the rail as the main transportation route and connection had a whole different perspective on life and the world. And that all changed. A few years after the highway came here, we saw an influx of tourists, industry, and then of course Whistler. And Whistler is its own game changer, as we all know, and it's severely impacted this community economically and socially. But before Whistler, there was the train, and they were part of this nostalgic look back in the past. And our speaker today is Leonard Andrew, Chief Leonard Andrew, who was born and raised in Mount Currie. He went to school here. We were just reminiscing about his connections with the founder of this museum, Margaret Fobert. And she was also the history and English teacher at the high school. A very determined lady, and today we still are appreciating the thoroughness of her work and what she did there. And Leonard is a fine example of her upbringing. At any rate, it's our pleasure. Welcome, Leonard, and we'll let you take it over. And I've got some questions later on, but take it away. Let's hear what you have to say about the old days.
Thank you, George, and thank you to the people from the museum here. My name is Taya, and as indicated by George, I was born here. I live here. Here with that. And Upalmiuch, our native tongue, is my first language. I was born back in 44, actually. So it was only 30 years after the railroad was built, I guess, and planned. So just to give a bit of an intro, I have 5 children, 10 grandchildren now. One of them's here, holding us. And one of my daughters is actually here also. School, via the railroad, really. We had to go, my parents brought me up north, actually, towards Lillooet, you know where that is, Sunnyville. And from there, we were trucked to Kamloops, to residential school. I went to school there for 5 years before I opted out, which was a sort of a rarity at that time, because I sort of baked out because I indicated to my father especially. And in those days, you know, it was the situation was that you never questioned what was done to you, and etc., even my family. But nevertheless, I said, I don't want to go back to Canada, because we're losing our culture there. We're not allowed to even speak our language or learn our culture. So at that time, we had our own day school in Pemberton, which was actually, sorry, not Pemberton, Mount Currie. It was called Creekside at that time. And I think that school was built back in the 20s, 29, I think, to be exact. So I went to school there for 3 years, and virtually the same as residential school, really, only that you could go home and then speak your own language, learn your culture, etc. But after my 3rd year there, after grade 8 actually, we still weren't allowed to go to public school, whether it was here or elsewhere. So they sent me out to North Vancouver to a parochial school called St. Thomas Aquinas for 1 year. And being young as I was to be sent there was my other sibling and one of my siblings, and friends. We ran away. The only way to get back home was via PGE. The railroad. In actual fact, at least at that time, it was already open, but meeting with North Vancouver. And we got caught and sent back. So I went to school there for 1 year. But after that, I came to school here in Pemberton for 4 years. Going back to 51, when I first went to school, I just turned 7 at the time. Actually, it was a matter of days, and I turned 7, I was sent out. And that is strange, I was sent out, and it wasn't like today's super trains that you ride now, right? Whether it's PGE or whatever. But it was sort of like a luxury to us, because right at the tail end of that train, there was a flat car, right? You can sit there and just enjoy the weather, it was cool all the time, But all the rest of my siblings went the other way. Actually, I grew up, there was 13 in our family, actually 11 when I was born, But we were all sent out to school. So the others were sent down south to Mission, Seashell, and other schools that are available, And what they did, of course, at that time was that we went to Squamish, got on the ferry from there to Vancouver, and hence forever, And of course, that happened until 1956, I believe, when the whole line was open through here and beyond. The opening, of course, beyond that, actually, through the lower Sutter via highway was a bit different, I guess. But nevertheless, it was quite the trips wherever you went, And in the summertime, while I was going to school in the early 50s, my dad actually worked in Alta Lake, Whistler today, and I'm leading up to something here, so, and the whole family had to move there during the summer, right? We lived there. I think it's now the 18th hole of the golf course there. I sort of smiled when actually someone from Singapore actually treated us to a golf game there. And I was telling him about it, and he says, wow. And I have a picture of it, one picture only of my siblings. Everything else went as planned, We had a big family, therefore a big garden, a lot of stuff. So we had to come home weekends, put in the hay, weed the gardens, and etc. Like any family, I guess, that lived in this area. Beyond that, I want to talk about my dad. What I'm going to do now is change my hat. Because of the fact that it's a centennial of the railway. Initially called the PGE, Please Go Easy, and I know I've seen a lot of about a dozen different names for it. My dad, Johnny Andrew, he actually also donated one of those his trapper cabins. Because he was a man who knew many things, he did many things through his life. One of them, he was a trapper growing up. He came from a family of about nine siblings. His family, his father especially, was also a well-known man. You've seen the book Pemberton. He's mentioned in there. In actual fact, I think my former teacher of 4 years, Mrs. Forward, co-wrote that book, right? And so it's very special because of the fact that my grandfather was not only the first mail carrier in this valley, meaning, of course, they delivered the mail, whether it was to Lillooet or down south, and etc. And they had runners here that ran those areas with the mail, and etc. I read a lot about it in another book. It's by Charlie Mack, another elder that's from here. And I've seen a photo here one of these buildings, thank the museum for that. Actually, I'm also helping with having that photo now. So as big as this red sheet there. It's in one of our new buildings now in Mount Currie with all our elders. There's about 24 elders in that photo. What we're doing is putting all their names in the photo, including their Ukwamich names, their Indian names. And I'm saying now to the band, I says, I know, I says, I was young ones also, we want to have it, put a glass over it, whatever, and make it permanently there, right? You'll see it if you ever go there once you enter that building. And I say to the people now when I talk to them there, no, I'm an elder, and that these are the people. Says, I bet you anything that says all the people that are here have relatives on that photo. Sure enough, they do that. Most of them. Back to my dad. Fortunately, we taped my grandpa, and he's telling the stories about his trapping days. And, when you're talking about someone that was born way back in 1905. I remember it thoroughly because of the way he said it. 1905, the way he said it, he stressed that, right? So I never forgot it. Lo and behold, the railroad here was built 9 years later, type of thing. Yeah? But nevertheless, I said he was quite a trapper, right? And throughout this, not only this valley, throughout this whole area. We called it our territory, and beyond. They had trap lines. Everybody had trapping. They were not only trappers, they were hunters and etc. And he took over his father's trap line apparently, which is down to the Lower Lake area. There's photos of it in here also. But I guess in growing up, I can remember he had already stopped trapping. But he befriended Slim Fobert, who was actually always down our way, down at our, I'm not sure if he was a fish warden also or whatever, right? They used to always sort of tease each other. Oh yeah, I can beat you, and I didn't know what the heck they were talking about. So like they were talking about a war or something. Which it was a soccer game. Lo and behold, now that I'm retired, and just a few weeks ago, we found a photo of, he was about 100 years old, of the soccer players in Mount Currie. I've seen the one in Pemberton, like during the book, right? It's one in there. And, I don't know how old that one is, but they always played Pemberton. And their games was mainly the farmers versus the trappers, hunters, and etc. Nobody would let up, he said. Listening to them talk about these stories, my gosh, we make our games today seem so tame. But stemming from that, I guess that's when my dad had indicated to Slim, I'd like to donate the Trapper's Cabin to you. And that's what's in that story. It tells a whole story about his brothers and himself going out to trap. This small little cabin was actually just measured by foot, 6 by 7, just enough to fit 3 people in there. Just so once they can sleep, etc. There can be a little stove of some sort to keep them warm. If you're talking about the days when the snow was that high, not like today, way up in the productive areas and etc.
Was that like?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. Firstly, I guess my grandpa, Andrew Joseph, and I actually walked into Whistler about a few months ago. I was at the doctor appointment, but I walked over to the library, and I guess I looked like I was lost, so they asked me questions and can I help you, etc. So I told him I was actually looking for some books in regards to their history, etc. He said, he says, go to the museum. So I said, okay. So I said, well, I've been wanting to look at some of the books here also, and so we indicated that they can get a library card that is also good in memory. So he says, okay, I'll take it, So I got a card. But nevertheless, I walked over to the museum and met the CEO there, Sarah, I think her name. She has some write-ups and the question almost every week. And, so I was asking her about my grandpa. And so she gave me her website because to where to look. So she's helping me trying to find out if there's any photos or stories about my grandfather. Because when the train came through from Squamish, I guess a lot of the tourists got off and they wanted to be guided, to the Pemberton Trail area and to the mountains, to do whatever they needed to do. And my grandpa, I guess, had a pack train at that time, so he hired to take him up to the mountains and so as a guide. So that's partly what I'm doing today, to study the genealogy really of our people. Right? And, so that's because I'm retired now, really. And, that's a fulfillment I'm getting now in regards to researching all this. And it started out a number of years back, just in our family tree alone. And there's 2,500 names now in my family tree, and it really, really gets to be an obsession, really, because of the fact that we're going way, way back, almost to the times, really, before this settlers came, out in the book, but nevertheless, I think from henceforth, how we work together is very incredible. I keep saying that not only to our people, to the, actually, I call them the Pembertons, so because of the fact that the last thing that there was built, as I can see, was a barn. A barn that's just beyond here. I was talking to some of the people there that I went to school with, actually. And so I was sort of kidding them and saying, where are you going to put the hay? But that's, I think, going forward in regards to working together, because of the fact that, I've gone to a lot of the farmers markets there, right, before. If it's raining, you're not going to go. So, now you got a place to have it, almost probably. After I graduated out of here, I was sent to school in, I'll lead up to it. I was sent to school in Surrey, BC. Actually, I was supposed to go to university from here. Thank you, Mrs. Fuller. I made it in the university program. But Simon Fraser University wasn't open that year. It was delayed for some reason, building this, etc. So they sent me over to Surrey for 1 year, grade 13. Wow, what a shock. I think there was only 125 students here, about there, where I graduated, the old school, not the new school where the grands and our graduating. I was sent to a high school from grade 10 on. It was 2,500, I believe, in that school. What a shocker. But nevertheless, I think, grade 13 here, basically on your own. The year after, I went to Simon Fraser University. Ever since then, I've been a charter student there because the first year was open. And from then on, we had a pilot course at recreation, so I took it. A cousin of mine and I took it. And I passed that, and so I went to work out in college on Vancouver Island for 3 years. Worked for them, and then I came home. As soon as I came home, I started working for my brother Nick, who had his own logging company here in Mount Curry. And at that time, a former chief asked me, "Are you home for good now, son?" Because I was actually out there for a long time. I said, "I hope so." So I says, "If you are, then we're going to put you on the council." Wow. sure enough. They had an election the coming year. Lo and behold, they put me on council. And lo and behold, I was probably the last one to get on. You know, I was quite young, at that time. And henceforth, there was something to look forward to, I guess, for the next 38 years in my life, you know. And I think I was on council for 8 years, and I tried out the chieftainship here in Mount Curry. And I got on for 8 years, I think that's when I first met the year should have ended, you know, at that time. And then we were just in a stage of developing our own area, really. So I said, okay, I got into management there for 14 years. And due to some skepticism, really, I got back on as chief. I tried to get on, and I did. And that led to the Olympics and etc. here. But anyways, that's part of the education I went through, right? But along the way, one of the things that happened really was that the changes that took place, not only in the railroad and etc., right? Because seemingly my dad and actually a lot of the people in Mount Curry, including my uncle, one of my brothers, actually 2 of my brothers now, the more I talked to them, the more they worked on the railroad. So everybody seemingly working up and down the line, eh? Type of thing. BGE was our main source of transportation, you know, whether you went to the Vancouver, Squamish, and etc., or up north and so forth. And it was incredible, really, but the change did happen, you know. Yes, the PGE always went easy, you know, always was late, etc. But only the other day, and that actually wasn't even not too long ago, put a little bit in here just for smiles, really. We got rid of the penny. And it says, oh, they are finally going to get rid of the penny. We used to almost go to meet the train in Mount Curry. These young kids, I guess. We used to always put a penny in the track for good luck. Flatten it out so they can keep it for good luck, I guess, whatever. Now they've gotten rid of it in most places, I guess. But and of course, you know, the 100 years now, you know, it seemed like a long, long time. You know, there's been a lot of things that have happened since, and it seemed like the remoteness of this community is now gone. You know, and I've seen many, and I've had it in this book, in my photos too, like the stopovers and etc. As the PGE was coming through, like and in one of the photos I see that, and remember when W.A.C. Bennett, and there's a lot of us older ones that are remembering this old Bennett family, right? Sons and etc. W.A.C. Bennett, of course, is a premier here, right? And he's stopped over here, and how they honored him, etc., right? Trade continued on beyond, I guess. And another one was, I can really recall, is that when I became chief again, back in 2003, I was sent to Reno, to the Torino Olympic Games, because we were still vying for our Olympics here. So they sent us there, and lo and behold, it says, where's Torino? And far, far away, of course. So we went there. Again, the whole delegation was. What we were there for really was to welcome the world to come to the 2010 Olympics, and we eventually got here to welcome the world. And while we were rehearsing there, and a man came forward and he says, "Oh, where are you people?" He said, "We were from Canada." So everybody was saying, "We're from Canada." And 4 chiefs here in Sarah, 4 house positions. And so he came over to me and he says, "Where are you from?" And He says, oh, a little place called Mount Curry, it's way back in British Columbia, it's in the Pemberton Valley, and etc. This is how you usually, like if somebody asks you questions, right? Because they said, one out of 1,000, there'd be nothing that I know where Mount Curry is. And I said, so then it said 100 miles north of Vancouver. I said, oh, I know where Mount Curry is. It was amazing. He says, yes, I used to work on the railroad in Squamish for a few years. This guy was a world-renowned tenor singer, right? He opened the closure of the Olympic Games in Torino, right? And he's now recently retired. Quite a small world, I was thinking, gosh, he worked on the railroad. He says, yes, and he probably met my father, my uncles, my brothers. Because whenever there was some drastic thing happen, the workers just all get together and work on it, right? Whether it was a slide or whatever, right? And, again, the PGE, yeah? And of course the change that has happened really, you know, to the CNR and etc. You know, it took many, many years and, you know, a lot of changes, eh? And, especially on the working on the railroad. I think that's really big changes that have happened. We're going to the high-tech stuff now, right? So I want to honor all our railroad people, especially my dad and my uncle, my brothers, and etc. Chain reaction came about in regards to the other cabins that were donated here, right? It was very timely, really, from Sam Jim, ladies of art to the Barney House, and etc. They wanted a place where they can be preserved and where they can be kept so as they won't, you know, deteriorate. And I could see that they will last forever. We still have some in Mount Curry where people live in. Actually, the one I was born in, a house way over 100 years old. And I was saying to our people, that building will outlive any home that would be built in the next 100 years.
Yeah.
You know, that's how solid they are. The dovetail like Barney cabin. Eddie Savage was the Grand Chief of our area here. And he actually was my mentor, like my father was there. So I used to go sit with him in Gladcourt, Darcy, Anderson Lake, all the time, asking questions in our language, mostly. And I said, Eddie, Jesus, I says, there must be something. When you traveled back east, meaning to Ottawa and beyond, and so she said, oh yeah, you check it out. I said, yeah. Whenever we had meetings, there's some delegation up there to fight for our rights and etc. He said it took them 2 weeks. You know, if you can imagine, already 2-3 days on the BGE, you know, wherever they're going. And beyond that, it was all by train, no flying at all. Eh? They went by train if it was to Ottawa, and it took them 2 weeks to get there, had their meetings, conferences, etc. They even went right as far as New York, he was saying. And they did have to come all the way back on the train. Eh? And eventually, they'll get back here in 3 weeks or whatever. You know. But it says, wow, that's a long time. It's very difficult area. And he said it was donated by another one of our elders, Sam Jim. Eh? And I just wanted to, I've seen a lot of the history of Sam Jim there, so I don't want to cover it again. But Sam Jim was quite a person, really. He lived to be over 100 years old. Eh? I can remember when my cousin and I were taking a recreation course, and I guess he heard that Sam Jim was in a home up in Michigan, of all places. And so I asked him, do you want to go see him before we go home? Sure. So we went up from Burnaby, actually, near Michigan. And we found Sam Jim in a home. So you can imagine all seats laid around the building, most of the wheelchairs and etc. And he only spoke our tongue too, eh? And he saw us, and he almost flew out of his wheelchair. So we visited him for a while, and we said, his name was Shitu. I never knew by some Jim Durant. He says, it's all in our language. He said, we're going home. So we want to say goodbye to you and go to leave. And he's scurrying around. He's a little guy, but he's strong as an ox. What are you doing? We're asking him, he says, I'm going with you guys. Oh. Lloyd looked at me and he says, what do you think, Leonard? He says, it's up to you. So no, he says, we couldn't say no to him, eh? So he got on the truck and etc. Like it was just like it was yesterday, man. He named every mountain, every river, every piece of, as we went, eh? In our tongue, because he lived that in his younger days, eh? So you can imagine, even before the railroads, in actual fact, I heard it from my Uncle Martin too, and they used to go to, before the railroads, they used to walk or horseback, into the Vancouver Farm Inland area and Vancouver. And they knew all the roads, there. Incredible. But, one of the things that was mentioned about him, I was saying to George actually, in Mount Currie we have a fairly new building there now, but the other building, you can imagine, the gymnasium we have there, we built it in the 60s too. We had him open it, and a few years after that, he passed on, except, and he says, wow, I can believe it when somebody says he killed his deer after he was over 100 years old. This is a man with many, many talents.